Winter has arrived, and with it the tantalizing prospect of steam and snow. A cold snap over the Christmas holiday allowed just such a combination with these Santa specials along the newest of our preserved lines, the Weardale Railway. This is Steam Video, issue 18, the video magazine for the railway enthusiast. In this issue, news with comprehensive coverage of the steam railway scene, including London's circular Santa tours based on Paddington and Kensington Olympia. Valley Perspectives with Ron White's personal view of the Santa season. Jubilees in preservation with a look at the survivors in operation both on the preserved network and on the main line. Moving the goods. The recreation of a central part of working steam operations is now commonplace on our preserved lines. We take a sample from around the country. Archive showcase featuring some fine footage from the camera of Kenneth Oldham. And finally, Steam Showcase, the finest photography from the finest cameramen. Number 9 marked yet another preservation milestone in December. This time it was the turn of the West Coast main line to play host to the A4, which ran north from Crewe to Preston. This was the first time steam had traversed this section of the West Coast main line since 1968. It was remarkable that steam could mingle with the busy scheduled services between Crewe through Warrington and Wigan to Preston. With the electric to steam changeover taking place at Crewe, the participants can enjoy an extra 50 miles of steam haulage. Number 9 joined the existing Cumbrian Mountain steam route at Preston. In gale force winds, it battled over the Settle and Carlisle. At Askill, our cameraman captured a rare steam event. 46229 was to pass the A4 on its final ascent to the summit. Had both trains been running to time, this would have taken place much further north at Appleby. This testifies to the difficulty of staging a joint photo stop, although this was considered at one stage. The Settle and Carlisle season restarted on the 3rd of December after the autumn leaf fall period. The same month saw 6 treble 09 as a regular performer. This was to run through to Crewe, once again along the West Coast Main Line, although this time in darkness. The Pacific had, incidentally, endured an extended stay at Bounds Green in November due to the so-called incident under the wires. Princess Margaret Rose made a positioning run from Derby to Carlisle a few days later. Sadly, a points failure in the London area and pathing problems at Derby resulted in the train running 2 hours 40 minutes late. It was to be terminated at Appleby. The specials scheduled to run along the freight-only lines to Blythe and Morpeth were an on-off affair. Although 44767 was prepared for action at the now closed diesel depot at Camis, its first runs were cancelled because of concerns over safety. In the event, the operations scheduled for the first 2 weekends of December were cancelled for safety reasons. Meanwhile, in the northeast, the same safety concerns meant the loss of 2 days' operations on the Weardale Railway. The trains of the 3rd and 10th were cancelled, although that of the 17th did run. On this day, a rain-soaked and bitterly cold Darlington station plays host to IVAT 46441. The specials ran on the 17th, Christmas Eve and New Year's Eve. This branch was used on a freight-only basis to the cement works at Eastgate until March of 1993. Steam last visited the line at this time in the form of K1 number 2005. The IVAT tackles the final section of the line into Stanhope. The specials couldn't run beyond Stanhope to the sidings at Eastgate, as this is not passed for steam operation. Since the station itself has no run-round facilities, each of the 2 runs each day were tailed by a Class 47 at the rear. In the late autumn, sister engine IVAT 260 number 46521 had worked together with standard 260 TAC 80079 to the capital on the Capital Envoy. Mechanical problems resulted in an hour late departure from Worcester, although a fine performance meant some of this time was to be recovered. The train used the Western Main Line from Didcot through Reading to Paddington. For the next few weeks, the pair were based at Old Oak Common for a series of circular runs. On a typically wet autumn day, the pair prepare for action at the depot. The standard tank backs onto Old Oak's turntable. The specials were to run over a circular and an out-and-back route. One used the Greenford Loop and started at Paddington. The other ran a circuit from Kensington to Olympia via North Pole Depot, Acton and Chiswick. The circuit from Kensington Olympia saw services over 3 weekends in December. The 6 days operation had 4 trains on each. An electro-diesel provided power at the rear. The standard tank crosses the Paddington Main Line and is heading south along the North London lines which carry services to Richmond. The lines around Old Oak and Willesden have been considerably remodelled. The specials took advantage of these alterations. The period after Christmas saw attention switch to the Greenford Loop, with trains starting from Paddington. The loop meant that the IVAT would leave the terminus Boiler first and arrive back Boiler first without actually turning en route. The specials were well loaded. In fact, such was their success that a repeat is being considered for 1995. The duo finally headed back to the Severn Valley on New Year's Day, running from Paddington to Worcester. They had in fact been called in as replacements for 5029 Nunney Castle on the outward leg of the Severn Cotswoldman. December saw steam once again climbing through the Chilterns after a break of 1.5 years. The William Shakespeare had originated from Paddington, running to Stratford-upon-Avon via High Wycombe and Banbury behind Nunney Castle. Unfortunately, all did not go to plan. For the third time in 1994, the locomotive was unable to complete its booked journey. It suffered the ignominy of running out of coal, losing around 3.5 hours. Its final stretch into Paddington was completed behind diesel haulage. Within 24 hours, the castle was withdrawn from mainline working, pending a full examination and appraisal. The loco approaches Didcot for this purpose in disgrace. (6024) King Edward I has had a rather more successful season, with a busy diary ahead prior to the expiry of its main line certificate in March. The Midland Sovereign was to take the King from Didcot to Swindon, Bath, Bristol, and then north to Worcester. From a king to a duchess. The autumn saw Duchess of Hamilton making its first run on southern metals with the Southwestern Venturer. This originated at Waterloo, heading to Salisbury and back via Southampton. Another successful mainline performer has continued its season. Unusually, this special of late November started and ended at Alresford on the Mid-Hants. The Austerlitz Express was operated by the Britannia Locomotive Society. A few days later, the Brit was to move north to the Settle and Carlisle to cover for the maroon 6009, which was still languishing at Bounds Green. Clan line has been active following its main line certification. December saw 2 runs from the capital, the first from Paddington. The Christmas holiday saw a run to Exeter. It ran out from Waterloo on the 28th and returned from Exeter to Paddington via the Berks and Hants the following day. Recently reliveried 3077 Sir Lamiel made its first ever visit to the Great Central Railway for a spell of action over the New Year holiday. The King Arthur is to remain on the railway until February. Its main line run from Victoria on the 8th of January was postponed. Prior to the loco's arrival on the Great Central, it had taken part in filming activities in a disused warehouse at Birmingham, where scenes depicting Victoria Station were recreated. In dismal New Year weather, 3077 departs Loughborough. The railway's services were to be considerably expanded over this period with newly reliveried Sir Nigel Gresley in action. And now to another A4 with a rather less successful season. On the 7th of January, 6009 worked south along the Welsh marches on a positioning run from Crewe to Gloucester. It was 65 minutes late and had less than 100 passengers on board. Number 9 had been impounded at Bounds Green for a total of 6 weeks, while a dispute over its clearance raged. Its non-availability caused 3 specials to be cancelled, with 2 more running with alternative motive power in the form of Britannia. Unfortunately, the run of this day was not without its problems. To make up lost time, the water stop at Pontypool was abandoned. However, soon after, the loco was halted for examination after a brake problem was discovered. As a result, it ran short of water and had to make a detour into Newport Station. Unfortunately, Newport was dry, and the local fire brigade were then called in. Needless to say, the A4 was, by this time, very, very late. The loco had worked south to undertake a series of runs from Waterloo and Paddington, as well as appearing in the Mid-Hants February Gala. In a reenactment of 60024 Kingfisher's run from Waterloo in March 1966, the A4 heads west from Woking. 1994 has certainly been a momentous year for mainline steam. However, we start 1995 on a very uncertain note. Privatisation and its political fallout, together with the continued problems of running steam, make the year ahead very difficult to predict.
On the north end of Bewdley platform, we're waiting for 2857 to come in from Kidderminster, and then for Gordon to roll down the hill tender first from Bridgnorth on a service through to Kidder. 2857 is just coming to the end of her boiler certificate, and we'll have to have a general overhaul before much longer. .2857 takes water at Kidderminster. It was always said that the Great Western Railway had the reverse dog symptom. As a dog could never pass a tree, a Great Western loco could never pass a water column without stopping to take on water. A most extraordinary effect that no other railway seemed to suffer from. But already 2857 is taking another tender for. The loco is due for a complete refit. The 10-year certificate is coming to an end at the end of the year. 100,000 quid is going to be found from somewhere to do a complete rebuild. It will probably be repainted in green, although I must say I like the dignified BR black and just enough dirt on it to make it look feasible. Great Western goods engines shouldn't be glittering clean. Just a little patina of dirt is perfectly acceptable. .7325 was built at Swindon in 1932 as number 9303 for reasons known only to the Great Western or British Railways. In 1950 they were renumbered on the end of the 73 series. This is the side window cab variety, paired here with a large capacity tender. Footplate of 7325. Running round at Kidderminster Station. The great beauty of the moguls, the great beauty of any Western loco is the ease of operation of the regulator. I say rude things about the operation of Western locos, but this regulator is a shining example to every other railway on how to do it properly. I've fought with regulators on V2s with my feet up the boiler backplate trying to open it and then to shut it again, but with this it's a simple little job, just snatch and away we go. But you've still got the standard problem of all Western locos, a brake handle miles from the cab side when you want to see out the window to see what the shunter's telling you. But really, This is the pure Great Western Victorian cab. Everything as it's been since the days of Armstrong. Nothing's ever changed or needed to change. The station behind me, though it looks old, isn't. This is the Severn Valley's own masterpiece, based loosely on Ross-on-Wye. It is a facsimile of an old-fashioned Great Western station and looks all the better for it. This is one of the major construction jobs undertaken by any of the preserved railway companies, and they've done an extremely good job indeed. They can be very, very proud of their station. We're standing on the track bed of the line from Bewdley through Wyre Forest, Cleobury Mortimer across to Wooferton. We can look across the muddy Severn to the piers of the Dowells Viaduct that went in times past. How sad it is looking at it, just the stumps standing in the river. Rake of Great Western stock, and Gordon, the big 210 bangs up the bank out of Bewdley. What a nice sight and sound it is. Built by the North British in 1943, most of those big 210s were exported for wartime service, but the Gordon was the lucky one. It went straight to Longmoor, lived its life at Longmoor. Hardly ever got away from the Longmoor Military Railway, apart from a trip to Brighton, works on one occasion, one to Eastleigh, and even an extraordinary visit to Bagnall's at Stafford in the 1950s, when it was virtually totally rebuilt for about £8,500. The biggest job Bagnall's ever did, they said. The 210s were a lot better locos than the 280s. The 280s were rough. They were a bit light on their feet for a freight engine. The 210s held the rails better. The factor of adhesion was better. But they shared one characteristic with the 280s. Run them tender first, and the tenders came off the rails. They were uncanny for the way in which they derailed their tenders. When they went through workshops, it was necessary at places like Crewe to fill the tanks with 4,000 gallons of water to hold the damn things down on the rails. And when they got them inside the works, 4,000 gallons of water was solemnly emptied out again. The railways had some wonderful little habits in the old days. At the end of the day at Bewdley, we look around, Christmas lights, Christmas carols from the loudspeakers, Santa trains. The railway's gone into some serious marketing to catch extra traffic, running 4 locos on a Sunday. Very good work, this. But thinking back to when trains started to run in 1970 between Bridgnorth and Hampton Load, it's come an awful long way from then.
Kenneth Oldham covered steam operations throughout the country on 16mm film in the 1960s. We'll now show a sample of a fine collection. A classic scene at Perth as 60009 departs south with an Aberdeen to Glasgow express. The Black 5 on a freight confirms this is real archive. The date is the 16th of May 1964. On the same day, 4472 Flying Scotsman backs under Aberdeen's magnificent gantries on the station's southern approach. The A3 is working a special for Edinburgh. From semaphores in Scotland to another display of semaphores, this time at the junction at Ruaben. This was 4472's first run following preservation by Alan Pegler. The date is the 24th of April 1963, and the loco has hauled the outward leg of the annual Festiniog Railway Special. Now to the northeastern. York Shed's characteristic coaling plant was situated alongside the East Coast Main Line. The date is the 2nd of May 1964, and the A3 has arrived with an RCTS special from London. The Hope Valley, on the 16th of May 1964. A WD Austerity number 90410 climbs along the Edale Valley with a loaded coal train bound for the Manchester area. Most photographers were drawn by the attraction of southern steam. The location is Sway Station, and the date the 10th of July 1965. West Country Pacific 34048 Crediton, minus its nameplates, heads a down express for Bournemouth. This is a part of a collection of colour film covering all aspects of railway operation in the 1960s. We'll be making this available on video, with the first release available at Easter. Great Rail Tours will take a look at a range of motive power in action throughout the country prior to 1968. This vibrant colour record includes historic scenes on long closed branches together with working steam operating alongside. The Jubilees will always hold a special place in the hearts of enthusiasts. A total of 8, complete with their distinctive yellow stripes on the cabside, were to survive into 1967. 191 of these 3-cylinder Stanier Pacifics were built by the LMS from 1934. Of these, 3 have escaped the cutter's torch and have worked since preservation. In addition, 45699 has survived as a source of spares. 45690 Leander was acquired by the Midland Railway Company based at Derby. It was later moved to Dinting Railway Centre, where it's seen in the mid-1970s. These scenes are now, of course, modern history. Next came a stay at Carnforth, and from here the loco was moved to the Severn Valley. Unfortunately, weight restrictions on the railway limited its speed to 20 miles per hour, with operation on a limited number of days each year. This is the occasion of a gala on the 27th of June 1987. The location is Highley. Leander last worked in 1989 and since then has been stored at Bridgnorth awaiting a major overhaul. .45593 Kolhapur remained in service well into 1967. It was based at Leeds Holbeck and became a well-known performer in the West Riding. The locomotive was a regular sight on the famous summer Saturday extras from Leeds to Glasgow. 1427 from Leeds crosses Ribblehead Viaduct. The date is the 5th of August 1967. Collapore was acquired by the Standard Gauge Steam Trust at Tyseley, from where it had an active main-line career. On this occasion, it's preparing to work a series of shuttles to Stratford-upon-Avon. It's the 7th of June, 1986. Today, Collapore is active on the Great Central, its main line certificate having expired. 45596 Bahamas was to survive in service until July 1966. In July 1965, the loco heads a relief train from Crewe. Preservation found the locomotive based at Dinting. On Dinting's closure, it was relocated in 1990 on the Keighley and Worth Valley Railway. Operated by the Bahamas Locomotive Society, it's been a star performer. Bahamas has had an active mainline career. In 1994, it has worked along the Welsh Marches, the North Wales coast and to Scarborough. However, the year's end has seen the expiry of its mainline certificate, and the loco is now confined to the private railway sector. The year has also seen the re-emergence of 3 long-lost jubilees, albeit in the form of 45593 Collapore in disguise. 552 Silver Jubilee in Pioneer silver and chrome livery was turned out on the Great Central Railway as part of the railway's 25th anniversary celebrations. From here, the Jubilee was moved to the East Lancs Railway, where it assumed 2 more identities for the benefit of photographers. On the morning of the 22nd of September, 45698 Mars re-emerged from the scrapyard. Note the Fowler tender borrowed from the East Lancs Crab, giving it an authentic 1930s appearance. Later the same day came 45700 Amethyst. Collapore was due to return to LMS red livery. In the event, it will be repainted Brunswick green and will join the green liveried Bahamas on the Great Central for the coming season. It should be remembered that freight was the main source of revenue for the working steam railway. A 5600 tank heads south at King's Sutton in 1962. From a bridge near the station, a mixed freight heads south behind a 9F. The country goods yard to the right of the picture completes a classic scene. Working steam finished, of course, in 1968, and the traditional freight passed into history soon after. Most thought this aspect of railway operation gone forever. Happily, they've been proved wrong. Recent years have seen the private network running more and more freights for the benefit of photographers. The delightfully situated Gwilly Railway in southwest Wales provides an ideal venue. The date is the 26th of August 1989, and hired in 262, number 4566, was to run once the normal timetabled passenger service had finished. At this time, the terminus of the line was at Cwm Dyffryn, where the train is being shunted before returning. Now a journey in a guard's van, seemingly the most romantic of locations. In reality, on a loose coupled freight, the journey was far from comfortable. The Bluebell Railway has no diesels in its fleet. Works trains for the extension to East Grinstead are steam-hauled, with 040 Normandy, the usual means of motive power, in 1994. Another classic scene on the Severn Valley, where a demonstration freight is being shunted in the goods yard at Hyley. Branch line freights are now a part of the steam scene. The main line variety is a little more difficult. Even that has now changed. The location is the Great Central, and 5224 is hauling one of the great preservation achievements of recent years. In 1992, the railway took delivery of 24 former British Rail 16-ton wagons from the Rover car plant at Longbridge, with a further 4 coming from British Coal in South Wales. The inaugural wind cutter was run on the 7th of November 1992. This is a recreation of the fast freights hauled along the Great Central from Woodford Halse to Nottingham. Haulage was normally in the form of 9Fs. Given the loose coupled trains, the timings achieved were all the more remarkable. In the late 1960s, most believed that steam work freight had passed into history. How wrong they were. Winter steam. The presence of a heavy frost can transform an otherwise humble performer. The location is the Gloucestershire and Warwickshire during the centre season. Sun has been a rare commodity during the weekends of December and January. A rare burst of late afternoon winter sunlight illuminates Britannia on a southbound working over the Settle and Carlisle. Our photographer waited around 3 hours for the late-running 46203 on a positioning run from Derby to Carlisle. It was well worth the effort. We've come full circle, back to the same location we opened with on the Weardale Railway. The snow is gone, but the atmosphere of winter steam remains just as pleasing.